Well, the French Grand Prix was a pivotal race for this season. And while we were not able to get a recording out on Monday, we were sitting here being like, hey, so much happened. We still have to cover it regardless. So, Dan, what are we starting with today? What's the most important thing to take away from France?
Well, I think we keep saying every time we get together, we say, "Man, that was a crazy race,"
Yeah.
and that is definitely the theme of the season. So,
Yeah.
um, to underscore your opening statement, I would put a line under the word pivotal, and that is
Yeah.
so. I think this race, the reason it's important, and we have to at least touch on it. I think we'll go into more detail after the Hungarian Grand Prix. But,
Yeah, for sure.
but to get it out there, there's a few things we needed to discuss. Primarily is this is I think Ferraris has with the race they had, the problems that I have not wanted to completely face and admit they have. I mean, they really, really made some mistakes.
Wait,
And
so are you actually willing to agree with me that they're a clown show sometimes?
they were in France. Bring out the clowns, man. That's it. Or bring in the
Yeah.
clowns, as they say. But
Yeah.
in France, I'm sorry. There were two there were, I mean, when Sainz is passing someone and they tell him to pit right when he's passing by the
I
pit
know.
in, and they don't even know he's fighting for position and passing somebody. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a problem. Their heads are they're so far in the trees they can't see the forest.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on. And then unfortunately with Leclerc's accident, which we can touch on briefly, um, you know, the official word from Ferrari is there was no mechanical error, but Leclerc he fell on his sword, took all the blame, and then said, "Oh, I'm still no. I need to go look at the diagnostics and analyze what happened." So he fell on his sword and said, "I don't know why I crashed, and I need to figure that out."
Hmm.
The back end just broke away. So whether or not it involved the throttle or something else or a suspension part, Ferrari is really tight-lipped about it. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, with Sainz starting in P19 and with Leclerc crashing out, that handed the second, third positions, and with Perez having a horrible weekend, that handed the second, third positions to Mercedes.
Yeah.
So, but I think with this race, Ferrari they're in dire straits for this season. I don't think they're
Yeah.
I think we can talk about that a little bit. I think they're in dire straits of losing the constructors championship to Mercedes at this point.
Yeah, they are now much closer to Mercedes than they are to Red Bull. In the standings right now, Red Bull is at 396 points and Ferrari is down in 314. So I'm bad
Wow.
at math, but that's what, like 80 points back, something like.
Yeah,
And
something
then
like
and then
that.
you have Mercedes at 270, so they're only 44 points behind Ferrari.
And we still have half a season to go.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
Effectively for the most part.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah.
and yeah, that's you and I were talking before the race, so I think that's important to note. Do you want to go through the constructors standings really quick? We just hit the
Yeah, yeah,
first
sure. I'll
three.
just wrap up the top 5.
Yeah,
You then have Alpine now ahead of McLaren, and I think they were probably gonna end up staying there for the rest of the season. We'll have to see.
I agree. I agree. There's no reason to think not.
But they are only 4 points up on McLaren, but they're at 93 points now, and McLaren's at 89, so in 5th. So that's
I think
pretty.
Alpine will continue. I think
Yeah.
Ocon's been driving. Fernando's kind of lit a fire under him. He's doing
Yep.
better.
Yep.
So I think that's very likely that continues.
Yep. And then we'll do top 5, actually top 6 because we'll get all
Okay,
6 of the top 3 teams in there.
hit it. Yeah.
Um, Still Max obviously out number 1 at 233 points.
Okay.
Leclerc is still second, but he is, what is that, 63 points back at 170. So 63, that's rough. Like
Yeah.
he needs a miracle to get the title this year.
Yes.
And then in third, Perez still, but he's only 17 points. No, 7 points back from Leclerc. Leclerc's at 170, Perez is at 163.
Okay. let's pause there for a second. um,
Yeah.
I think that's the battle. The
Yeah.
Max appears to be walking away from it right now. Nothing's for
Yeah.
sure in Formula One until it's over, but I don't think we're gonna see a finish like we did last year. I think
Yeah.
Max is probably going to clinch this season a race or two before the end. It won't be
Yeah.
mathematically possible for anyone to catch him, which is great. That's he'll be world champion twice in a row if that continues. But I think there's a huge possibility, especially with Ferrari's reliability
Mhm.
issues that they can't seem to shake. Now,
Yeah.
Red Bull's not perfect, but I'll tell but let's finish the top 6 and then we'll get back to that. But
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's crazy. Leclerc is at in second on 170 and Perez on 163. They're neck and neck. But then
yeah.
in fourth, you have Sainz on 144, so he's trailing a little bit. But then Russell in fifth on 143, so he's literally 1 point behind Sainz.
Wow.
And then Hamilton in sixth on 127. So,
Okay. So
yeah,
Hamilton's not going to be the world champion this year.
it would take a miracle.
Even more than yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it would take, yeah,
Max would have to quit racing for the rest of the year, number
right.
1.
Yeah.
So,
So,
okay. So what I was going to get at is we have an issue now where there have been repeated reliability errors, primarily with Ferrari.
yes.
Second, though, with Red Bull, we got to face it.
Mhm.
Red Bull has had their issues. Mercedes has not.
Nope.
And I heard somebody say it was either I think it was the post race program after France. Um, but I believe I heard somebody say that Mercedes has only had one retirement this season so far. And
Yeah.
I assumed he meant mechanical retirement, and I know they had an overheating issue once. It may have just been a retirement due to the crash that Russell had. I'm not sure which, but
Yeah, to my recollection, that's the only retirement I'm aware of from Mercedes, the Mercedes factory team anyway, is
yeah.
just that Russell crashed in Silverstone, that was it.
So
So,
the issue is that okay, the Mercedes car is slower. It's a definite third place car, but it's rock solid right now.
it is rock solid.
And then you have the Red Bull car,
Yeah.
which is better than the Ferrari, and they're ahead, but they aren't perfect. And then you have Ferrari,
Yeah.
which could have been walking away with this season, but their cars, and the other thing I wanted to mention, and I hate to get into this because drivers get better as they get older, usually, but Leclerc has a history of crashing at the worst times, where it's his fault. He did
Yeah.
it in 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, he crashed during qualifying.
I think he crashed out of the lead in Monza once.
Yeah, well,
Like,
yeah, he crashed during qualifying
yeah.
at Monaco. There's just times last year, not this year, but
Yeah.
there's times where he does. The last time we raced there, other than this year,
Yeah.
but there's just times where, and I kind of thought, he's getting past that because he was so good at the beginning of the season.
He was. He was incredible.
I would love to hear that the car had a mechanical, frankly, because that would mean that it wasn't him. He could hold his head high and still be very frustrated. But if it was him, then unfortunately that's not a good thing.
No.
But anyway, yeah, that's our top 3 right there, and that's the part we had to get over. What is it with Ferrari? What is going on with those guys? What's your take on it? I've already talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, clearly their reliability is, I think, the number one concern. But if I'm going to be completely honest, their number two concern right behind that is their strategy. They don't
Yes.
seem like they're paying attention to the race. They're paying attention to what their drivers are doing, but not the surrounding race. And that was more evident. Like we saw that in Monaco. We saw that in drawing a blank, but there was another race shortly after that where they screwed up their strategy, and then we saw that like the worst was in France, and it's just like I don't know what they're doing. It seems like it might be one of those situations where there's too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, where they're just kind of stepping on each other's toes, and there's
Are there
no
too
like
many or not enough?
Maybe. I mean, who
See,
knows?
now,
Yeah.
they are I believe that they are trying to recruit people that are good at strategy and engineering from both Red Bull and Mercedes.
Yeah. Well, they need to.
I had heard that they were actively recruiting 2 people, 1 from each camp.
Yeah. It just seems like they have a culture of like I don't know. It's just a weird culture. Like it's simultaneously like the guy at the top makes all the decisions, and yet like everyone else has to take the blame for when things go wrong.
Well,
It's like
as a former software engineer, here's what I think.
okay,
That they have an engineering culture at Ferrari.
that is true. Their engineering is outstanding.
Yeah, they even though they are having reliability issues, the Italians tend to over-engineer whatever they design. I mean, it's
Yeah,
usually good. I mean, I know in the motorcycle world that's true with the Moto Guzzi's, they're over-engineered.
yeah,
And they, and I think with if I'm right, if that I mean if I'm at least leaning in that direction, then you take a guy like Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, they're ex-racers and they have some
yeah,
personality. I'm not saying they're not engineering types. Toto Wolff is a businessman, Christian Horner is a driver who's
yeah,
a very smart man and he understands strategy. But at Ferrari, if they're just staring at the instruments of the airplane and not bothering to look out the windows, they're missing stuff.
yeah.
And that's what an engineer would do. He would just rely entirely on data, computer screens, telemetry,
Mhm,
and they're just not paying attention to the real world. That's the fault
mhm,
engineers tend to fall into. It's a risk that they have to deal with. So
mhm.
that's my 2 cents, is they need somebody to get to basically get their head above the clouds, above the engineers, pay attention to what's going on, and kind of drive things from a if, and Matteo is not doing that.
Mm-mm.
So, and he should be. That's his position. He's the head chef. He should be shouting out orders to everybody, and he's just not doing it.
Yeah, what
So,
I've gotten from Ferrari in looking back throughout their history and the little bit that I've done that is that they have always and they still do, they have always had this attitude of there's Ferrari and then there's all the other teams and we
yes,
don't need to do things the way they do things. We're the reason the sport exists. We're the best in the business. We don't what applies to them doesn't apply to us. And it's like, well, evidently that's wrong and you need to start learning from your competitors who have these things under control. And I think there needs to be a massive cultural shakeup at Ferrari, or they're just going to keep doing this, where they'll have a great engine, they'll have a great car, but they're gonna just shoot themselves in the foot with either reliability or strategy or both.
that could be true. I don't know how likely that
Yeah.
is to happen it won't happen this season, I don't
No,
think. It could happen in the off season.
it probably won't happen within a couple of seasons. Like it
Yeah.
takes time to do that.
It does. It
So
takes at least a full season of trying to implement changes like that for that to take effect the year after that.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think they need an overseer who, somebody they need a strategist, like a supreme
Yeah. Oh
strategist
yeah.
who understands the engineers, understands the drivers, and somebody that just like doesn't make a mistake. There's some people whose decisions in Formula One or in any um when they're successful in something that has this many moving pieces, every once in a while there's a personality
Yeah.
that rises to the top and they just instinctually know what to do and they're almost
Yeah.
always right.
It's
Um
like they're just reading the Matrix. They just clue in and they just
yes.
get it.
Yeah, it just makes sense to them where it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to us mortal
Yeah.
humans. So and that's the kind of guy they need. If they had that kind of guy this year, they would probably be in a better position. So
Oh
hopefully
yeah.
they've and I hate to see the car itself not get its due. Yeah, I think they have a really strong platform.
Oh yeah.
Um, and Leclerc needs to, if it was his mistake, he needs to stop making mistakes. But the problem is, when it wasn't Leclerc, it was Sainz.
Yeah.
Sainz
Oh no,
had
that's
all
true.
these errors and crashes prior to this. Now he's kind of
Yeah.
tightened up. And Leclerc is making mistakes, apparently. So
Yeah.
if that's the case, again, but anyway,
Any final point on France then?
Again, I think it would be the same. I think Alonso did great. I think Haas is doing really good. Daniel Ricciardo is still kind of a disappointment. He's still not driving, still isn't comfortable with the car.
Finishing the points, but only barely.
Right, right. So I think that those are, in essence, that we're kind of repeating ourselves. But I think what we can say is we are seeing Haas do better and better and better. I think Mick is alive still, and Magnussen's doing great. I think those guys have a good battle going on. So yeah, looking forward to the Hungaro ring. I think I'm really interested to see what happens because it's getting hard to predict.
Yeah.
And as of yesterday,
Yeah.
now again, I always say this, I always get excited. It doesn't always happen, but there's like an 80% chance of rain on Saturday. And I haven't
Ooh.
checked it today, but that was as of yesterday. Sunday is only like 18 or 20%.
Okay.
But something,
So
yeah,
we could
there
get
may
a wet qualifying. That's always
we
fun.
could have a wet quali, which is, as well as I do, that tends to mix up the field. You got guys like Norris doing really well and Mick Schumacher doing really well. So
Yeah.
some of these guys are really good at rain, they excel in rain. So, and other people absolutely hate it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's it. I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I just in kind of wrapping this up here, I think just to mirror what we said at the beginning, this was a pivotal race. I remember looking back at last year, seeing the battle between Lewis and Max, and going, Silverstone is going to set the tone for the rest of the year, and it did. They came together then for the first time, and then they came together multiple times after that, and there was a marked tone change at Silverstone. And I didn't call it for France this year, but I think looking at France, that is the pivotal race this year, where I don't think Ferrari is going to claw anything back at this point. They'll try. They maybe will put in a valiant effort, but I think it's pretty much set in stone at this point, and we'll
Yeah.
just kind of have to see how things play out. But it seems what it looks like. But
Yeah, yeah. This is the race that changes the season,
yeah,
I think. That was the race.
yeah,
So we need to, but again, this is Formula One. Anything can
anything can
happen.
happen.
And we just have to wait and
Yeah,
see. But yeah, all things being equal, this is the race we'll look back on and say, okay, at Ferrari, their hopes were dashed on the rocks after
yeah,
France.
yeah.
But
Alrighty.
anyway, yeah, we had to cover that. Hey, I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's going to be it for us for today. We will be back after the Hungaro Ring in less than a week at this point. And that starts the summer break, and we have at least one episode planned during the break. We might try to squeeze in two, and if we're feeling really up to it, we might do three. I don't know, but certainly one. And we'll be back in Spa at the end of that. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, take care of yourselves.